Right, let's get started. Welcome to Ramsac and to our latest online briefing session. Today we're talking about AI and how you can take that journey properly and securely. If you don't know me, I'm Rob May and I'm the Executive Chairman here at Ramsac. And right now I'm also spending a lot of my time giving talks about this rapidly changing and hugely exciting topic. If you turn on the news or you've been to any business networking events right now, it feels a bit like this video from Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google.
AI, generative AI, generative AI, generative AI, AI is AI, AI. It uses AI to bring AI.
That might not be a genuine video, but it does, doesn't it? That's how it feels. And the market's changing massively. I was also looking at these stats at the end of January in terms of market share. I'm going to be talking today about Microsoft and what they're doing with Copilot. But if you look here at the market generally, Microsoft and OpenAI, which of course Microsoft invested $10 billion in, have the majority of the marketplace. So, you know, I think it's realistic that we're talking about this and what that position is in the market. But when it comes to Microsoft and when it comes to Copilot, on the 15th of January, so a couple of weeks ago now, Microsoft made a huge announcement about Copilot, which really surprised us all. Like the previous week, our briefing calls were that Copilot was a long way away and that you would have to, the minimal purchase that you could make was 300 licenses and so on. And then on the evening of the 15th of January, they sent out a blog article that said, actually, we've changed our minds and it's available now. And you can buy a single license if you want to. So massively shocked the entire industry. And this afternoon, I want to discuss what does that announcement actually mean? And if you want to go on this journey, which I assume you do, what are the vitally important considerations that you need to be aware of? Let's look at Copilots as far as Microsoft are concerned. Arguably, first we had Clippy. Clippy was replaced by Cortana, and now that's been replaced on Windows 11 by Copilot for Windows. Over Christmas, Microsoft released the Copilot app. It was released the week before Christmas on Android and the week after Christmas on the iPhone. That gives you ChatGPT-4, Bing Chat, and DALL-E totally for free on your phone. The announcement that came last week was around Microsoft 365 Copilot, and that's a digital Copilot that works across all of the Microsoft 365 products and all of your data. They also announced Copilot Pro, and that's the domestic version for people with a 365 home or family license. And then excitingly, they also announced Copilot Studio. And Copilot Studio is a developer platform that includes API integration into any app that you've got API access to. So whether that's, Salesforce or whatever. So hugely exciting. So Copilot Studio, really, really exciting. But they're just the headline Copilots from Microsoft, because actually there's way more. Microsoft are offering a variety of Copilots across all their platforms to help you with your tasks. So these include Copilots for coding and writing and gaming and so on. And each Copilot is designed to assist you in a specific area, making your work more efficient and more effective. Many of you will know that part of Microsoft's investment in OpenAI resulted in ChatGPT being integrated into Bing. That resulted in a huge uptake in the use of Bing. You know, Bing's always been vying for market share. The joke was always that Bing stood for because it's not Google, and of course people were using Google. We're now seeing the majority of people using Bing as their browser, and this chat became known as Bing Chat. And if you had E3, if you had an E3 license, an E5 license, or a business premium license with Microsoft, then that Bing Chat became Bing Chat Enterprise, which you can see here indicated by the arrow. That importantly meant that the data that you were sharing with Bing Chat was ring-fenced within your particular tenant. And you can see here that you got an indication to say that those chats were protected. But that's no more. Assuming you're on Windows 11, you will start to see, and it's being rolled out, so not everybody on Windows 11 has got this yet, but you'll start to see the preview Copilot button, which I'll indicate here with an arrow. And when you click on that, that resizes the window regardless of what you're working on, and that gives you Copilot for Windows. It gives you this blade down the side of the screen, and everything else just resizes to the rest of the screen. And again, if you've got E3, E5 or Business Premium licenses, you get the work version, which protects your chats, and it precludes any data from training. And again, you can see here you've got that protected shield there to say that anything that any of your staff are sharing isn't being shared with the outside world. It's only within your tenant on Microsoft 365. If you're not yet on Windows 11, or if you are, but it hasn't yet got this new version, you can also access this simply by going to copilot.microsoft.com. So let's talk about data protection and privacy. So E3, E5 Business Premium gives you Copilot for the web. That's the work column here. And you simply go to Bing and sign in with your work account, or your technically that's the Microsoft Entra account, but your work email will sign you in there, and that gives you that what was Bing Chat Enterprise and is now Copilot for the web using GPT-4. You'll see here now, if you don't have E3 or Business Premium licenses, if you're simply using Windows 11, then what you get is Copilot for Windows. That gives you all that ability to chat and to interrogate ChatGPT, but you don't get commercial data protection, CDP. And that commercial data protection, that's the protection to say that your data is not being saved or it's not being used for training. You'll also see that if you've got Copilot for 365, you get what we call SCP, which is the security, compliance and privacy. And some people think it's odd that you don't get that in the web. The reason is that you don't need security, compliance and privacy for your web chat. And the reason is because the web chat does not have access to what we call the Microsoft Graph. So the Microsoft Graph is all of your Microsoft data for your organization. It's all of your messages, it's all of your documents, it's all of the pages in your SharePoints and so on. Everything that you've created within Microsoft in your organization goes into this entity called the Microsoft Graph. And when you're doing web chat, it doesn't have the ability to access that. So you don't need that security, compliance and privacy protection, but you do get it when you license Copilot for 365, which I'll go on to explain. I realize I'm throwing a lot of words at you at the moment. Let me take you through that so that you understand clearly what that means. Copilot for 365 is embedded across all of the apps, and it's early days for some of them. And I would say that not everything works as it will do eventually. Not everything works as it's sometimes advertised as working, in my experience. And for example, to use Copilot with Outlook, you've got to be running what they call New Outlook. Well, the thing is, New Outlook is still in preview, and it doesn't work with a number of different add-ins. So, for example, here at Ramsac, I've got various add-ins that I use, so Mimecast and Know Before Fish Threat, and all of those things. Those don't work yet in New Outlook. So what I've got happening at the moment on my machine is I'm running two versions of Outlook. I'm using Classic Outlook and I'm using New Outlook. And if I want to use the functionality of Copilot in Outlook, then I make sure I'm in New Outlook. Support for Classic Outlook will come very soon. They're talking about rollout starting this month, apparently. But as I say, for early adopters, you can run both Outlooks as I am. So let's see Copilot in action. Let me show you firstly what Copilot in PowerPoint can do to bring your ideas to life. Let me show you this.
Now let's say you're getting ready for your customer pitch meeting. Everyone is at a moment when they wish they could turn their proposal into a customer-ready presentation without having to start from scratch. Well, guess what? Now you can. Using just your own words, Copilot can translate Word into PowerPoint, and it can also translate PowerPoint into a Word document. Now you have a professional-looking presentation that you can hone and polish. Let's say you want to add a slide. Give Copilot some quick instructions. There it goes, ready for you to review. So this slide is too wordy. Let's ask Copilot to make it more visual. I'll give it a few seconds. And check this out, Copilot can even animate the slide. It gives it a professional design treatment in a single click. But it doesn't stop there. Copilot can even generate speaker notes. No, I'm serious, speaker notes. It's not only a time saver, it's helping me be a better presenter and close this deal.
And that's brilliant. And that works really well, actually, already. That ability to transform existing written documents into PowerPoint decks, complete with speaker notes and sources and so on. That works brilliantly, and it can start that presentation just from a simple prompt, all with the ease of natural language commands, and that's why I think this will be such a useful tool to so many. Let me show you Copilot in Excel. This is really interesting as well, and I think this will challenge some of the other tools that Microsoft use. Let me have a look at this. Let me show you this and show you how, regardless of your role, you can become a real numbers person by using Copilot in Excel. Take a look.
Copilot in Excel helps you make sense of all your data. Say you need to analyze this quarter's sales results. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. But you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in and helping you better understand what's happening. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model and even asks if you want to learn more about what it did with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot in Excel turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
Now, I think that's really interesting because, you know, a lot of us are using things like Power BI and other dashboards to generate that sort of information, but the ability to sit there just with a simple spreadsheet and start to ask those questions. I mean, one of my favorite questions when we're looking at numbers is, so what? You know, what does that mean? What are we going to do as a result of it? And one of the things that I think Copilot is going to force the working world to do is ask better questions, because it's the people who ask the best questions of the Copilot that are going to get the best insights and the best output. And we've really got to train people to think critically and to be able to ask those questions rather than just consume whatever's being thrown at them. Microsoft 365 chat is brilliant. It's a real-time communication feature available in Teams and Outlook and SharePoint, and it allows users to send instant messages, share files and collaborate. But it's a great time saver. I asked it last week when I was next seeing one of my colleagues, and not only did it tell me when I was meeting him in a one-to-one meeting, it also told me which meetings we were in together during this week. Really, really good. It will work across multiple calendars. So if you've got calendars on multiple tenants, it works across that. It really is a fantastic time saver. We're also seeing other OpenAI tech being integrated into other parts of Microsoft. For example, this is Microsoft Paint on Windows 11, and DALL-E 3 is now built in to Microsoft Paint. So you press the co-creator button and you give it a prompt, and this prompt here was assisted by using the Copilot chat, the Windows chat, to come up with a good prompt. And my prompt was, as you can see, a business meeting in a modern meeting room with cinematic lighting, award-winning photo, 80mm lens. And that's the drawing that Paint came up with a number of different variants that I could click on to see. And then you can then edit them if you want to. Now, I'm good with Microsoft Paint. In fact, some would say my skills with Paint are legendary, but I couldn't do a painting like that in Paint. So great feature, and we will continue to see more of this tech integrated into the Microsoft platform. The Copilot app, as I said, it's available on the iPhone and on Android. You have access to two default modes, which, you know, when you first launch it, normal, which is GPT-4, but you can also choose 3 different tones, just like on the PC version. So you click on the menu in the top right and say show all tones. Creative is the sort of the generic mode to use. Balanced uses GPT-3. That's the original GPT. That's the fastest. If you use creative or precise, they use GPT-4. So they will be a bit slower, but again, completely free of charge. In terms of pricing, let's just talk about pricing for a moment. So Microsoft Copilot for 365, it's currently only available as an annual commitment paid upfront, and that costs £296.40 per user per year. We are fully expecting probably in the next couple of months, that will switch to monthly billing, albeit Microsoft is still saying that it will be an annual commitment on those licenses. This is an add-on license. So in order to have Copilot for 365, you need a base license of Microsoft 365, either Business Standard, Premium, or E3 or E5. But importantly, and this was the change a couple of weeks ago, there are now no minimum seats. So if you wanted to, you could just buy a couple of licenses, rather than what they were saying is it was going to cost you £300 per user per year, and they were telling us that you were going to have to license everybody in the organization. That's not the case. Copilot is free on Windows 11, or you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. Copilot Pro is a domestic add-on product for Microsoft 365 personal or family, and that's £228 per year. And then Copilot Studio, that's best part of £2,000 per tenant per year. So you would license that for your organization, but then there's no user costs. And again, that's an upfront cost. What I must stress, however, is that when we're talking to anybody about this and about Copilot, it's not about the licenses, and we really don't want people just to place orders for licenses. And I'll explain why in a moment, in terms of there are loads of risks. Microsoft Copilot for 365 is not a license purchase. It's a business transformation journey, and you have to go into it with a mindset of this is a business transformation project. It's really important. So how do we get there? I think most people who have joined this call want to get to destination Copilot, but it's really important that we do that securely. So what are the steps to get to the destination? And to help make this easier to understand, think of the process that you undertake when you go on holiday. You don't just turn up at the airport and jump on a plane. You plan it. First, you pack your bags and you only take what you need. You get your passport and you check that you've got the right documentation. And then you go through the security scanner and you make sure that you're not taking with you any items that you shouldn't be taking. And then we run through a whole load of pre-flight checks before actually getting on the plane. And I think this is a good analogy for Copilot for clients. It can't be a case of wanting Copilot today if you haven't been through these prior steps and looked at the data. You've got to make sure that you've only got the information that they need within the organization and that all of the controls are correct. And then when everyone's on board and everyone within the company has gone through the feedback loops and they understand how they can use it and how they can utilize it, then we can go. So with packing your bags, don't rush. Take your time. Research what Copilot can do and how it can be used in the company. Identify who are you going to involve in this? What is your AI strategy? You've got to have an AI strategy in place before we start this journey. That's really important. And then after researching those benefits, how are you going to roll it out? Is it going to be a full department, or is there going to be one person in each department that can then be product champions within that team? And who's going to use it, and what for? What is a person's role, and do they actually need it? Consider the return on investment for that spend. That's £300 a user per year. Consider return on investment. Consider what their productivity savings will be, what their time savings will be, and where it can boost creativity. It will not do that for every single person in every organization. And I think it's right that Microsoft aren't forcing us to license absolutely everybody, because I think, you won't be able to get benefits for absolutely everybody. And what you don't want is for this to turn into a really expensive license with something that people aren't using. So let's make sure we get that bit right. And then evaluate the necessity of each element, eliminate anything that you don't want Copilots to have access to, such as old templates, old document versions. Remove anything that isn't relevant. You don't take your skis on a beach holiday, and it's exactly the same with Copilot. Copilot, an AI, doesn't know what it's looking at unless you tell it. So if you upload a whole load of documents, in fact, we had an incident at Ramsac last week. We were doing a desktop test for our business continuity plan, and when we looked, we realized that in the archive folder for the business continuity plan, we'd got a version of the plan for every year for the last 14 years. Now, there's no way that you want to consume all of those old versions of our business continuity plan into Copilot, because if you've then got a user who sat at their machine and they start to ask questions, Copilot will look at all the documents it's got access to in order to answer the questions. So it's really important that for each of these areas that there's only one version of the truth. There can only be one version of our business continuity plan, in the case of that example, that sits in our Microsoft graph that is accessible by the Copilot. So what does passport mean, getting your passport in terms of Copilot? So firstly, what's your data policy? You should all have a data policy because you should have all done that as part of GDPR, but is that up to date? Do we know, and are we clear how records are kept? Are we clear who has access to them, or how long those documents will be accessible for? Copilot's only as good as the data it has access to. It's not creating anything new. We're giving AI the capabilities of looking at our existing data, and garbage in equals garbage out. Review what's in scope for Copilot. So, for example, by removing semantic indexing on a SharePoint page, that's like putting an invisibility cloak on a SharePoint page. So any confidential or personal information that you don't want people to have access to, we can control that through Copilot. And by doing that, you can make sure that it's not saving that information, or that information that you don't want surfaced is being surfaced. If any underlying personal information you want Copilot to have access to, we can anonymize. So we need to make sure that personal data is secure. We don't want people to be able to sit at their desktop and ask Copilot for the home address of some, a new starter if they're not the HR department. We don't want people to be able to ask questions about people's pay slips or understand what commission is being paid if they're not supposed to. So we can put labels on Copilot. We can tell Copilot how to understand the underlying data set so as not to be visible to users. And we use things like DLP sensitivity labels and so on. And Purview is a tool that allows us to configure that information protection, and all the security elements of that are included with that business premium or E3 and E5 license. And then we organize the content into logical folders and sites and give them labeling. All of this has to be done before we go on the journey. You need to make sure that the folder structure makes sense and that we've labeled those folders with keywords and metadata that makes sense, because we're giving AI access to all of this information, but we need to give it understanding of what it's reading. And then that's fantastic because it can surface, for example, a sales plan, because it knows that Matt always creates that on the 5th of January every year, so it can surface that information quicker for the users that then have access to it. When it comes to the security scanning, firstly, we look at the company's security in SharePoint and in OneDrive. So have users got the right access? How is that controlled? How often are you conducting access reviews? Some of you will have heard me speak on cybersecurity and the problem with permission creep, where people go on maternity leave or go on holiday or whatever, and we change permissions, and do they get put back? And it's really, really important. Data discipline, we should have all been doing anyway. But in the new AI world, it's absolutely vital that this is done rigorously. So are we reviewing those security permissions on a regular basis? Configure and enable appropriate Azure information protection, that's AIP, and DLP, which is data loss prevention policies, to help people in the organization avoid accidentally or oversharing of confidential information. This is vital. We've got to make sure that people aren't accidentally causing big problems for your organization because they're accessing information that they shouldn't be accessing. We have to go through and classify all documents using the Purview information protection. And we use when we go through that process, we use a traffic light system. And it includes flags like this is private, or this is internal, or this is public, to ensure that data isn't accidentally leaked. Proper preparation prevents poor performance and future disasters. And I think that in 6 to 9 months' time, we're going to see a lot of problems that are being talked about in the press, where companies have rushed this and they've simply bought Microsoft licenses without thinking about it and without planning the journey properly, and are then trying to unpick the mess and the data leaks and the privacy issues of stuff that people have shared that they really shouldn't have shared. Pre-flight checks. There's no point doing all of this work if the company using Copilot isn't keeping up to date, keeping their information correct and storing it correctly. So they need a data steward to make sure that this isn't a wasted trip and that they can continue consuming Copilot and the AI capabilities long into the future. The best way to roll this out is having champions within a team, making sure that the adoption of Copilot is the best it can be, looking at utilization within the company. It's integrated into the 365 apps, but is the use high enough to justify the cost? This isn't just put the license on and then leave. There are all these checks in there and all these things within the 365 admin center that we can check once it's added on to see how it's being used. And as consumers of AI, we really need to understand how to prompt the AI properly to get out what we want. I think we need to be teaching our staff how to prompt AI. And so if you've got, just starting, you can start people just using Copilot for Windows and start that journey and do some training on how to do good prompts, how to ask questions in such a way that you get really good answers. And that's one of the things that we cover in our AI training, and I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. And then make sure that any issues that arise are fed back and resolved quickly using Teams or SharePoint or Microsoft Forms or whatever it is that you're doing, but ensuring that there's a place for users to share that feedback. Issues need to be dealt with promptly to avoid any turbulence. So that's the destination Copilot model that we use with clients. But there's more to that in terms of the delivery, but I just wanted to use that going on holiday model to help explain it. In terms of how we deliver this as a project, the first thing that we do is we run a Copilot security assessment to understand what data is there, and how many pages we've got and what security rights there are and so on. We then ensure that the data is secure and that the correct people have got the correct access and that it's clean, so there's no redundant data in there. Taking my example again of all those years worth of business continuity plans. And remember, I'll say it again, garbage in equals garbage out when you start to ask questions of this. And this needs a real culture of change for end users. We need to train our staff on how to use AI. We need to make sure that everybody is considering the ethics of using AI and understanding the difference between closed AI and open AI. Training is crucial to ensure successful implementation, and that everyone is clear on the capabilities of Copilot, what it can do and how they can get the most out of it. And then forming a strategy and planning the implementation. We do that, make sure that we've got a framework in place, that we've got a project plan, and we review the projects, highlighting the risks, highlighting the gaps of knowledge, making sure that we're sharing user guides with everybody, and making sure that everybody understands the best practice for use, so that we're using this properly and we're using it securely. When we're at that point, that's when we then plan the licensing need, and we actually start to price the licensing. And again, as I say, I think there will be people who will have bought licenses before they've done any of this, and that's a big mistake, in my opinion. One of the things not covered in the previous destination steps is Copilot Studio. When I was putting these slides together, I asked the Copilot in PowerPoint to simply explain Studio, and this is what it said. So it said, imagine you have a smart friend who is brilliant at building Lego models. Microsoft Copilot Studio is like that friend, but for developers. It helps them by giving ideas and suggestions on how to build their programs better and faster. It's like having a helper who whispers great ideas whilst you're working on creating something really cool on your computer. And that really made me smile. So I left it in. I left it in for you. But it's far more than that, because with Studio, we can integrate third-party data sources into our Copilots, whatever that might be. Salesforce or Jira, or essentially any API. Copilot 365 is not just about your data within Microsoft. You can leverage AI with all of your data sources outside of Microsoft, and those can either be set to be read only, or they can be set to be read write, so it's sending stuff back the other way as well. And this is typically going to require professional services for that customization piece, but that ability to create new responses and prompts plugging into all of that data is, I think, amazingly powerful. And as I say, that's an annual cost per organization of £1,972. So Copilot Studio is super exciting. One of the key factors when you look at this intelligence revolution is it is going to have a profound impact on knowledge workers. One of the American studies that I read said that 80% of the workforce could be affected. And I get asked a lot that, does all of this mean that people will lose their jobs? And late last year, Harvard Business Review ran an article, and they were talking about this very question. And their conclusion was that AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. And I think that's true. And I think it's important that you help your teams understand this. It's also important that staff remember that this is a helping hand. It augments what they do. And fundamentally, it's a co-pilot. It's not autopilot. It's there to run alongside what you do and to help you. It's like having your own assistant that you can ask it to do all sorts of jobs for you, and it does it really, really quickly without answering back and without ever being off sick. We've created a detailed pre-flight checklist, and when you get the feedback form at the end of this session, you can request a copy of that pre-flight checklist, and we'll send that over to you. I wanted to suggest some additional thinking around this as well, conversations that I'm having a lot when I'm going around the country giving talks on this subject. Firstly, how are you controlling the safe use of AI within your business? Have you got a formal policy? What does it say? I was with a client not so long ago, and I commented that they needed to have a AI usage policy for their organization. And one of the partners said to me, I don't think we do. And I said, no, you do. He said, no, I don't think we do, because I don't think anyone here is going to use it. And then one of the other partners who was also in the meeting went, what? He said, I'm using it right now. He said, I used it this morning. He said, in fact, I got a set of client accounts and I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to write the executive summary for the accounts, and it did it brilliantly within minutes. And I went, and that's why you need the policy, because you've now just broken all sorts of guidance rules in terms of sharing that data in an unprotected way. So it's really important that we have proper policies in place. And in fact, later this week, on Thursday, we've got another AI briefing event where we're talking about this, which we're doing hand in hand with some solicitor friends of ours. All of Europe is looking at AI, and we have the EU AI Act. This is the first regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, and it comes into force in 2026. The core policy wording is written, and my view is this is GDPR on steroids. Microsoft has expressed its support for the EU AI Act, and it's creating its response and its products alongside the guidance. Obviously, until the policy comes into force, it's likely to change, but you can read more about Microsoft's response to this. They have a website called Responsible AI, and there's some really good guidance and thought leadership on the EU AI Act on there. I also want to talk about bias. This is a demonstration using Midjourney, actually, so not a Microsoft app, but I wanted to show you. So this person here has asked Midjourney, which is the equivalent to DALL-E, is asked AI to make his photo more professional for his LinkedIn profile. That's the prompt he gives it. That's the photo he uploads, and this is what it does. It does a pretty good job. The problem is, and some of you will have seen this because this started off on X and then made it onto the news. This is Rona Wang, and she's an MIT grad. She did exactly the same thing. She uploaded her picture and said, give the girl from the original photo a professional LinkedIn profile photo. And that's what Midjourney did. Absolutely horrendous. Truly horrendous. And I think we have to be cognizant that bias is currently inherent in many of these tools, and we mustn't fall foul to that. Implementing AI is a strategic decision and a fundamental digital transformation project. And as we've heard, training, education, thought leadership within our teams and so on is critically important, that we do this right and we do it properly and people understand what are the risks and what are the challenges. I mentioned the importance of properly understanding your data. One of the first things that we do with clients is to run a data optimization analysis, and this is a reporting process. It typically starts as a half-day process, and then we move on to focus on data loss prevention, sensitivity labels, and so on, and then agree what policies need to be in place, what labels are needed, and what folder structure before you can move on to the next stage. But that's one of the first steps that we can take with you. We also run a half-day masterclass on delivering, on harnessing AI properly and harnessing it securely. It's something I deliver, and I either deliver this as a half-day session in-house for you, typically for your leadership team, or we run it as an open session on the last Wednesday of each month. So if you don't want to do it for the whole leadership team, but you just want one or two people to attend, and they can pay to attend an open session on the last Wednesday of each month. And again, that helps you work out how you put together that strategy that goes hand in hand with everything that I've just taken you through this afternoon. I explore a lot of these subjects and go deep on some of this thinking in my latest book, Harnessing AI, which you can purchase from Amazon and all good bookshops. And there's a number of tools and frameworks that we use in the masterclass, and I talk about I use them in the masterclass, but I also go through them in the book, and I talk about this 9-stage process in the book too, and the steps are, and this is about how do we work out how to use AI in the business. And we start by identifying your specific business goals and assessing the needs. And then we research the different types of AI and how they can best serve those needs, because there's lots of different types of AI. And Copilot is just one of those AIs. There's lots of other types of AI as well. And then, look at, well, what else are other people doing? What are other organizations doing? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Conduct a feasibility study and make sure you properly understand realistic costs around this. Consult with experts who can help you create that tailored AI strategy. Identify the strategic partner or partners that you want to work with on this journey. Run a pilot test that will give you real world insights. And when successful, you can then move on to full scale implementation, ensuring continuous monitoring and improvement. Make sure that you properly train at every level, and that you consider all the stakeholders, not just the users, but also your customers. How will using this stuff change what we output, and how will that be received by our customers? We've got to remember who pays our bills. And then continually improve, update, and where necessary, retrain. There will be stuff that goes into your AI. There'll be stuff that goes into your Copilot that you realize you don't want there. And we have to tweak it, and we have to say, actually, I don't want it referencing those documents anymore because we've changed our policy, or we've changed our services or our products or our pricing. So there's going to be this continual improvement, as I talked about earlier in that roadmap. The overall message around this is don't limit your thinking. Copilot and AI in general is hugely exciting, and it's going to make a massive difference to many in terms of productivity and profitability. McKinsey talk about successfully harnessing AI to make 20% plus EBITDA improvements. So don't just think about doing this, think big. You know, where can AI make a real difference? How are we going to do it? How are we going to do it in our organization? Are we going to do it properly? And are we going to do it securely? Because that's our message, and that's the journey that we want to take our clients on. You will get a copy of the slides if you want them. Again, in the feedback, you can request the slides. You've got my contact details. If there's anything that I can do to help, please don't hesitate to contact me or talk to all the people that you normally talk to in your relationship with us here at Ramsac. I really hope that briefing was a useful session. I hope that it was thought-provoking, and I really hope that we can help you on that journey. Thank you for your time.